there are many ways that fine arts can be beneficial. Sometimes people in the church tend to forget that and only associate it with idolatry. Having artwork in the church is not about worshiping the piece of art, but using them in correspondence with our worship towards our God. By having pieces of art in a church setting, we can come to understand what the Bible is showing us without having to try to solely picture it in our minds. Art can help us understand the biblical narrative of Christ. My first example is the painting, The Calling of Matthew. This piece of artwork shows Christ and also his disciples, Matthew and Peter. This painting depicts the story in the Bible where Jesus tells Matthew to give up his life as a tax collector and follow him. This painting not only depicts that, but shows the reaction of people at the table that were there when Matthew would have been doing this. This painting also shows that Christ would communicate with the lowest of lows, the people who were considered sinners in those days, especially tax collectors who would just cheat people out of their money. But it says in chapter 9 of the book of Matthew, while Jesus was having dinner at Matthew's house, many tax collectors and sinners came and ate with him and his disciples. When the Pharisees saw this, they asked his disciples, "Why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners?" On hearing this, Jesus said, "It's not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. But go and learn what this means. I desire mercy, not a sacrifice, for I have not come to call the righteous, but sinners." This piece of artwork helps us see the calling of Matthew in a way that people who haven't read the Bible can understand, and we can use it in worship with Jesus and the miracles that he not only performed physically in the lives of people, but also spiritually. The second piece of artwork is the Last Supper. This piece of artwork shows the reactions of the disciples as they learn that one of them will betray Jesus. This gives the visual scene in the Bible that is set in motion for the crucifixion of Christ. This picture shows Judas clutching a small pouch, which is symbolism for the money he gained for trading in Jesus to the Pharisees. This helps people also get a visual aspect of the Trinity, as the disciples are grouped in pairs of three, as are the windows in the background. Visual arts are beneficial to the church in many ways because it helps individuals in their worship towards Christ as they learn more about him from their Bibles and gain visual aid from the artwork.
So one of the common questions is, why should we use the visual arts in the Christian church? I think that this is displayed almost perfectly in Genesis when God creates himself. God creates the world in a beautiful manner. He doesn't just create for purpose, but he creates for the ability to be able to sit back and see something beautiful as well. The Psalm says the heavens declare the glory of God, and I think that's a beautiful way to look at the arts as well. God created us as humans in his image, and so not only does the natural world portray the only art that we need to see, but as humans we have this innate desire to create, whether that be create children or to create art or anything of the sort. We have this desire to create something. There's a famous theology book called Themelios, which discusses the idea of art in modern culture in the realms of Christianity. One of the theologians describes art as a carnal language, something that's before word or before doctrine, but something that speaks to our inner soul. That is a beautiful way to talk about God. These are some of the importances that we find in art, and that as a carnal language and as something that we have an innate desire to produce, needs to be something that can be in the church as well.
The Old Testament has many archaeological and artistic examples to represent the glory of God. Some examples of this are the Ark of the Covenant, Ezekiel's dream, and Solomon's temple. Exodus 25 states, "Have them make an ark of acacia wood, 2.5 cubits long, 1.5 cubits wide, and 1.5 cubits high. Overlay it with pure gold, both inside and out, and make a gold molding around it. Cast 4 gold rings for it and fasten them to its 4 feet, with 2 rings on one side and 2 rings on another. Then make the poles of acacia wood and overlay them with gold." This passage highlights the ornateness of what God wanted his physical covenant with us to be. So why should the church today not be like this was? Also, there is the passage of Ezekiel 1:25 through 28, which explains the vividness of God and his creativity in our lives. It says, Then there came a voice from above the vault over their heads as they stood with lowered wings. About the vault over their heads was what looked like a throne of lapis lazuli, and high above one the throne was a figure like that of a man. I saw that from what appeared to be his waist up, he looked like glowing metal, as if full of fire, and that from there down he looked like fire, and a brilliant light surrounded him. Like the appearance of a rainbow in the clouds on a rainy day, so was the radiance around him. Ezekiel sees God in this passage in a way that completely overwhelms his senses. But isn't that the way what God wants us to do anyways? He wants us to come and dwell within our very souls and fill us with his majesty. However, if you look around many churches today, you barely see any remnant of the splendor that is explained there. Finally, I want to conclude this section with the intricacies of Solomon's temple in 1 Kings 6. It states, "He prepared the inner sanctuary with the temple to set the ark of the covenant of the Lord there. The inner sanctuary was 20 cubits long, 20 cubits wide, and 20 high. He overlaid the inside with pure gold, and he also overlaid the altar of cedar. Solomon covered the inside of the temple with pure gold, and he extended gold chains across the front of the inner sanctuary, which was overlaid with gold." Just imagine how magnificent this sight would be if we were actually there in that time looking at the temple. The glory and splendor of God and his craftsmanship continues throughout the Old Testament in some of the most grandiloquent ways. Overall, the Old Testament clearly displays how art can be used to glorify God in a tangible and creative way. So why should we discontinue this practice in the Protestant church today?